Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and another NHL update video here. As earlier this week, could we say we are getting that much closer to having some hockey here, some NHL hockey here under these unusual circumstances? That's understating it with the global pandemic with COVID-19 or coronavirus here. But I'll just give my feelings on the various elements that the NHL recently announced on their return to play plan here. And then speaking of other leagues for return to play here, I have made some videos where I talked about other major leagues, but this week I felt like there hasn't been anything new with development to make a full video on. I haven't really heard anything new with the Major League Baseball plans from my previous videos. I'm just hearing that there's still a little mismanagement or disagreement, I'll put it lightly, between the Players Association and the owners there. So that's Major League Baseball. The NBA, they had their plans that they were looking to go to Disney World here. And I have already heard what the NBA is, that similar to the NHL that I'm going to talk about here, is that they're going to just jump right into the playoffs. So it sounds like the NBA is leaning towards having a 16-team playoff. There's still possibilities in how they're going to execute their playoffs here. And the last thing that I also saw a notification on Sportsnet a few days ago, which could give you an idea for timelines for the NHL here, that the NBA is looking at saying that the return to play, however they decide to do, won't happen until July 30th at the earliest here, so the end of July here, which I have a feeling that that's going to be the case with the NHL there. And Canadian Football League, they apparently say that team facilities are able to open on a limited basis where it's deemed safe, and the CFL has still got mulling their various ideas, but it sounds like the earliest, if there is going to be a season, it won't happen until September there. And I already made that video, and that the Grey Cup's going to be a play-in host by the best record on the qualifying team there. So you can see those videos here, so there won't be anything new on the Major League, so I'll just give my little tidbits on what I've heard on the other major leagues. But getting back to the NHL here, and the NHL seemed like the whole time that the pause button was pressed on all major league sports here, that the NHL's objective was to return to play as soon as possible when it's deemed safe by the government and health authorities here. And that's the number one thing we should emphasize here, that we need to do it as safely as possible here. And here we are, we're still in what they call phase one of the plan here, where players have to self-isolate here. I know players were allowed to go home, like, if it was other in the U.S., overseas in Europe here. However, apparently we're approaching June here. Believe it or not, we've been in this lockdown, quarantine for almost 3 months now, and it has been 2.5 months since we last had some NHL hockey here. But apparently we're getting close to maybe going to phase two on their plan here. I know on the NHL, and you can find online on their lengthy, wordy document on the protocols and procedures for going into phase two. And at this point, it's still only voluntary for players to return to their home facilities here, which still complicates things where you got players that go all over the world here, because still, up until June 21st here, the border between Canada and the U.S. is still closed and it's only open to essential traffic here. However, I think Mike talked about that. There has been dialogue between politicians and the league here on what they do to get around that, because there's definitely a lot of hub cities that were also shortly in consideration here. However, given recent events here, let's look at Minnesota, for example. There's definitely some civil unrest that's still going on in the U.S. there. I'm aware of what happened here. I'm not going to say anything on it just because I don't know enough on it, and I don't want to risk saying wrong information there. But it's out there, and it's definitely scarier, and definitely shows there's still divisive a divide in society right now, and one of the hub cities that was considered might change from that recent event as well as this global pandemic here. But getting back into the border, which still might complicate things on where they have these hub cities here, because I know Vancouver and Edmonton have really strongly pushed to be a hub city and for NHL hockey here, and there's going to be two hub cities here, one that's going to host the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference here. I still think, this is my personal opinion, that it's not going to be, well, one has to be in the western part of the continent and the other has to be in the eastern part of the continent here, because the NHL has not announced where these games are going to be played yet, because we don't know the situation with the COVID-19 and getting back to the safety here. We need to play these games in as safe environment as possible, where there isn't as many cases, and now throw in the civil unrest with recent events here this past week here. But June 21st is still the date for when the Canada-US border is closed to, let's say, most people. Let's say I can't go down to Montana to enjoy Glacier National Park, or go to do some shopping at Great Falls. They're probably turned away, or they might allow me in, but then they know that I have to self-quarantine for 14 days, and that's only going into Canada from international thing. Going to the U.S., there's no quarantine there, but that's definitely one element that could influence hub cities here. But the last week, I did my video on talking about the 2014 playoff format, and it was confirmed that there is going to be a 2014 playoff here. I don't know how you define the playoffs here, because there's still going to be that playing round, and there's still going to be a best of 5 here, and it's seeded 5, 12, 6, 11, 7, 10, 8, 9 here, and it's based on points percentage here. So what was the speculated playoff format in terms of the qualifying teams and the matchups, at least when it comes to the play-in and the top 4 teams in their respective conferences, that was accurate, and Gary Bettman confirmed that. He also confirmed that the 2019-20 NHL regular season is now in the books. So there won't be a conclusion on the regular season part, which I'm going to say that makes sense, because, well, now we're going into June here, and we haven't even started, full practices yet. We're not even there yet, because apparently Phase 3, when apparently full training camps will begin, and that's obviously after when everything is deemed as safe as possible, won't start till at least July 10th, the earliest here. So I personally think these playoffs, starting with these playing series here, which is a best of 5, won't start at least until the last week of July, or maybe the first week of August, the earliest here. And then that means that if it takes 2 months to go through the playoffs here, and who knows how many games that will be, because what is still to be determined is the playoff series lengths when it comes to the first couple series here. They say the conference championship and the Stanley Cup finals is going to be a best of 7 here, but there's still a possibility that rounds 1 and 2 may actually be a best of 5 here. And I think it was around 1985, 86, that actually the best of first round used to be a best of 5, and then the rest of the playoffs were a best of 7 here. And then speaking of play-in series, a best of 5 for the 8 teams, in my case of the Calgary Flames, we would draw the Winnipeg Jets in that scenario there. So exactly the reported format bracket, or who knows, could it be a reseeding like the conference format too? That's still yet to be determined. But for the top 4 teams that were in the respective conferences here, weighted on points percentage, that's how they figured it out, because everyone played a different number of games here. They'll play a round robin tournament, and they'll decide the seeding from there. So if you're a Leafs fan and you're thinking, all right, we get to play Columbus in this play-in series, because that's the 8-9 series there. However, Columbus is getting healthier too, so that might throw it in. And then the people are thinking in Toronto, oh man, we got to play Boston if we get out of that series again. Maybe not, because the top 4 teams will get, which I think they need to figure out a way so everybody is playing at the same time here, because it wouldn't be fair for the playing teams to get played up and get playoff intensity while the other 4 teams are doing this, sitting around going do. However, what's interesting though is where do you call it the playoffs? Because the top 4 teams will play each other. They say in a 3-game round robin and figure out, I think tiebreakers is goals and points percentage there. And that's still yet to be determined, and I plan to make follow-up videos there. But all their games that they're going to play each other will have regular season rules, where they'll play 3 periods, 20 minutes as usual. And if it's tied, then it'd be a 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime, and if that's still tied, it goes to a shootout here. So it'd be regular season rules under that case, which is definitely interesting here, because when it comes to the play-in series, whoever decides to get into the official playoffs for the round of 16, now I guess we've got to call it that, or the preliminary round, or whatever we call it here, they will go with playoff rules. So let's say, for example, the Flames and Jets, or the Leafs and Blue Jackets, they play their full 3-minute periods, and if it's still tied, then it goes to sudden death overtime, and it keeps going on until somebody scores. So if it goes to 6 overtimes, it goes to 6 overtimes. So that will be playoff rules there. That's definitely interesting, unique here, and I know that you're never going to come up with a perfect system. Let's keep it real here, that we've gone almost 3 months without hockey. Who knows? Who knew that, going back to the Calgary Flames, then on Sunday, March the 8th, when we lost that game to the Vegas Golden Knights there, that was going to be the last game indefinitely. Who knew that at the time? And that's definitely when the COVID or coronavirus definitely started picking up here. But, you're never going to come up with a perfect system, and hockey's not going to come back until at least, I think, the end of July here. Another thing that's still yet to be determined is there going to be a little bit of an exhibition? Because everyone's quarantined, and maybe they could skate themselves in game shape here, and we're going to need a training camp here, because now obviously we need to make it as safe as possible because of what's been going around right now, both Marley and Civil. Now we got to throw that in the case, but getting everyone up to game shape before you go up to that playoff intensity there. So that's definitely another thing in there. But the playoff format is what was sort of confirmed, but there's still yet to be determined if it's going to be bracketed. I know that they're set on the hub cities here, because if eventually you'll have 12 teams in each hub city there, and then after the play-in round is done, that goes down to 8, and then after the first round, that goes down to 4, and then it goes down to 2, and then you have the one team, and only one team will get to travel when you get to the Stanley Cup Finals here. So as time goes on, it would be a little easier to have a controlled environment to try to keep it as safe as possible. And I know that they're still working on plans if, let's say, someone tests positive here, that won't jeopardize the whole, playoff format or teams here. But there's still no guarantee, too, that this will still go on here. But the plan still is positive that there will still be hockey here. So that's pretty much the gist of the playoffs here. I know hub cities that I've heard consider, I think the strong contenders right now has to be Vancouver and Edmonton here, have this, because I think this tournament, the Stanley Cup playoffs tournament here, I think it's either all going to be in the U.S. or it's all going to be in Canada here, because of this quarantine rule. Even if, the NHL and the league and their local politicians here, I know Jason Kenney, the Premier of Alberta, has definitely been pushing hard for getting the hub cities here, and I know the same with John Horgan, Premier of British Columbia there. But those cities, Vancouver and Edmonton, definitely have the lowest cases of coronavirus or COVID-19 here. That I think it could be safe to have a controlled environment there, and then obviously availability of hotels. Apparently Calgary, Mayor Ned Nenshi was also talking to the league on potentially being a hub city here, but we weren't in consideration here. And then Toronto, believe it or not, was also a hub city, but I don't like Toronto's chances as much of being a hub city there, because the combination of all the cases that are still happening in Ontario here. And then we saw pictures of that park there where suddenly it looked like a mosh pit there, and that could jeopardize it. But the cases definitely are still higher in Ontario. And the fact that John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, as I understand, still kind of banned those kind of sporting events here. So I don't think I would like Toronto's chances as much as just being a hub city. And then when it comes to the U.S. here, I hear Los Angeles, California is still, which I find that interesting considering I hear the state is still under lockdown. Las Vegas, Nevada is still considered, and I could see that be a great hub city here with availability of hotels there. I mean, this will all be great for the local economy, especially the tourism industry here, and that's why I definitely would like, Vancouver and Edmonton, especially being an Albertan, to have hub cities there to host these things. Another city here, well, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota here, but I think that's going to change from the recent events here that's been going on. You can, search what's been going on there. I think the guy, I can't even, the name even slips my mind who was the centerpiece of this, but I know it's another, racial thing. I'll just leave it at that, but I think Minnesota is definitely they're running here because of civil unrest recently. Chicago, Illinois, also, I hear, is a hub city. And then we kept throwing out Columbus, Ohio. That Columbus, Ohio could be a hub city too, and those were just the few that I know that come off the top of my mind. But I personally think the favorites right now has to be Vancouver and Edmonton. I don't think it'd be, and plus the travel would be shorter. I mean, once you get everybody in the hub city here, that one could host the West and East, and that's the plan here. But we don't know yet there, and understandably the league's not going to make a decision until as late as possible here because of the evolving nature of this global pandemic here, and also hopefully maybe some civil unrest could quiet down too, which you have to factor it in now with this. So that's definitely one of the gists there, and then apparently expanded rosters you can carry up to maybe 28 players instead of 23 there. And apparently you can have unlimited goalies because now that the American Hockey League canceled their season there, which I understand, which it just wouldn't coordinate as well anyway, and they're also in the same boat here. But we'd have to be able to carry a few more active players here. It could be interesting here. Could we see, first, could Yusuf Valimaki for the Flames be available because he tore his ACL there? Could he be healthy enough to come back for his thing, or could we see like a Glenn Godwin? Could he also make his debut? And then there's some other intriguing prospects here, but at the end of the day here, it's definitely intriguing to know that hockey is closer to coming back here. And I think of the major leagues right now that is affected during this time here, I know football still has some time. When it comes to the NFL, I mean, they released their schedule. I know the NFL still has plans to try to play in their cities and try to at least make it presentable here. And I feel this could be a time, same for the NHL, to maybe try some new presentable gimmicks for hockey games, because it's all going to be played in empty arenas here. And then obviously the next few seasons are going to be affected by it because now that the NHL, let's just say we don't start playing hockey until, let's say, the last week of July, the earliest year, for the playing round and the whoever gets the top four there. And then who knows how many games there is. I mean, there's still potential that team that plays their way in, if they go on to win the Stanley Cup here, they might need to win 19 games because you need 3 and 3 in the best of 5 here. And I'm assuming best of 7 is time 4 for the getting it through the playoffs to eventually the Stanley Cup here. I mean, it's definitely going to still be at least until the end of September, or maybe first week of October. That Stanley's awarded here. I was leading to the next thing, that the draft. And then the entry draft could happen in October here, and then you have a couple of months. Because if other families might be allowed to go to join, because the border restrictions, apparently they're going to open up to immediate family members to at least cross the border, and maybe at least immediate family will be allowed to join the players that go to these hub cities. But then you still have to have that off season for Age of Frenzy here. So maybe next season, 2020-21, will not start until maybe December, or maybe some idea, depending on where we are in this, if there's effective treatment or vaccine here where fans will be allowed to go to the game. There's might be a possibility that opening day might be the Winter Classic, which I only can see that will happen if fans will actually be allowed to go to the game, because they're not going to play a Winter Classic in an empty, football or baseball stadium. But I mean, the draft lottery definitely gets murky too, and I don't understand it fully. That apparently June 26th, the 7 teams that aren't going to be in the playoffs, they'll be in the draft lottery to turn the top 3. But then they also have teams A through H, because we don't know the placeholder teams yet until the play around happens here. And I know there's like a phase 2, and there's like teams that would be slotted in there based on points percentage there. I know you gotta look online, and maybe you need some scotch and get a PhD to figure out how they're gonna figure out this draft lottery here. Maybe I'll make videos on it later once we know. But let's just say unless the top 3 are decided that are in the 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs, then I think there wouldn't be a phase 2. And then they'll just figure out the based on points percentage from reversed order, like they always do with the draft there. But imagine this. Let's be hypothetical here, because let's just say Chicago pulls off the upset and beats Edmonton in the playoff round. So Edmonton will be out, and let's say that Edmonton was that placeholder team, wins first overall pick there. Hockey fans will definitely moan at the idea that Edmonton will get the first overall pick and get Alexis Lafreniere with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl there. Just imagine the moans if that happened. But let's just say that's a very, very, very remote possibility. That's that 1 in a million Dumb and Dumber scene about you say there's a chance, but you got to throw that out there. Or the Pittsburgh Penguins get Alexis Lafreniere. Well, Crosby and Malkin are still, great players and future Hall of Famers here. They're plays the pioneer. Imagine if Alexis Lafreniere came there, another success. But that's what ifs for another day here. But yeah, I'm definitely excited, and I just say this is the best possible scenario you could come up with, the fair scenario to bring in all the variables that we still had a dozen games left, that some of these teams could be potentially in the playoffs or out of the playoffs here, so it makes it the fairest as possible. You're never going to come up perfect system, and an asterisk will not be needed here, because down the road here we're still going to look back on this team won the championship in 2020, and oh yeah, that was that crappy year, which definitely has been a crappy year, where this pandemic happened, and then we'll look back on that's what we did to have the playoffs in and get the Stanley Cup awarded here. So we don't have a season not played, or what happened, with the Spanish flu there, that they kept playing hockey and then suddenly people are getting sick and dying, and then they have to say, oh, I guess we can't get the series done because people are sick and dying. But that was 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. But what do you think of everything here? I'm definitely excited, and definitely, it's been stuff in all of us here, and I'm definitely, excited I at least got a haircut, and I made those videos recently there because things are slowly reopening here, and I feel normal up here, and definitely still going through some with sports withdrawal here, but there has been slowly more sports on. I mean, all the Asian baseball leagues have started playing. You got the Bundesliga, if I said it right there, in Germany there, to complete their soccer season there. And then the plans here in North America here, because this is definitely a dry run for next season when we have all 31 teams. And some people say, well, why don't you just cancel, wait till October? Well, what happens if we're not at the stage yet where we can have fans in the building? I mean, the next 3 seasons at least is still going to be skewed when season starts. Because, I mean, if the 2020-21 season doesn't start till, let's say, December, they Winter Classic year, and they're still committed to having a full 82-game season, that's going to shift when Stanley gets awarded. And then we're going to have to gradually move it back a few seasons there. So Seattle, you're going to have to wait a few more months maybe to have your team start here. And come on, Seattle, just name your team the Kraken already and release jerseys and market it. This is definitely the time for it to be relevant here. But that's just a little suggestion. But I also, all leagues are definitely in this boat right now. But I still think eventually NHL will start again in October. But players also even said they wouldn't mind starting in November too. But I like the October start the best time, and have Stanley Award just before July. But that's going to be skewed, obviously, the next 3 seasons. And then I made a take a few weeks ago where I was talking about the NBA, that next season for the NBA probably won't start until December, whatever they decide to do to get their playoffs done and have their respective championship with the Larry O'Brien Trophy there. I like the idea that was speculated on ESPN that maybe the NBA starting in December all the time would be the new normal. Because I think that would make sense, and then spread out the Major League Sports here, but that's another story here. But as I say, what do you think of all this? What hub cities do you think, could be the front runners to host hockey? I personally think it's Vancouver and Edmonton, given, with the global pandemic and the, civil unrest that's happened recently, especially with some considered cities in the U.S. here. But we're still at least, a month away before we can make that decision here. And I still think we're 2 months away from everything, when everything lines up, if everything lines up and everything plays out to make this as safe as possible here, because the NHL is definitely committed to that, and the voluntary training facilities that if we get into phase 2 there, that's regimented where it's only in small groups in a more controlled environment there, not coaches or maybe a coach. I mean, it's definitely a long document on a lot of extra things that you got to go through. Heck, when I went to go get a haircut here, obviously I had to get a hand sanitizer. I had to fill out the paper, kind of sign a waiver there, and I had to wear a mask and all the extra protocols that the employees got to do. Sanitize the sink after every customer, sanitize the chair after every customer, sanitize the washroom if a customer uses the washroom. And then sanitize the counter when they're done. Whew, man, it's just, it's all this we got to pay to be as safe as possible here. So I just want to end it there, and maybe I should say, what's your early prediction for playoffs? I'm not ready on making hard predictions yet, or go through a bracket here, because we need to know what's going to happen, and eventually I probably will make a bracket. Hopefully it won't be as disaster in the first round like last year, but that was the case for everybody here. But I think my early pick, if I had to throw it out here, would be Colorado, Tampa Bay, duke it up for the Cup, but there's a lot that still needs to be determined here. So if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, following the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I also talk sports on the show, but I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road at a rad sport event here. So if that all sounds like you'd be interested to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, and definitely feeling a little more excitement that there's a plan in place for at least NHL hockey to resume here, and the Calgary Flames, I guess you could say, we're in the playoffs. But we got to play a few extra games to get into the official playoffs, but some hockey has been better than no hockey here, and hopefully there'll still be a plan for the NHL to still be relevant. Get some money, at least from television revenue, and this also pushes back as far as possible for hopefully maybe fans will be allowed to be back in the game and maybe have a sea of red here next season. But a lot still needs to be seen there. And I also have my other social media links down in the description below there, and I also occasionally put my plans on videos to make here. And during the summer here, since I have a little more time and obviously been getting sports updates, I've been starting to talk about Calgary teams from the past here too. So I expect to do more of those videos here. So, as I say, go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video here.